Hi everyone. So this is August, which means that it's time for my reading wrap up for the month of July. So last month I read I think 9 books if I'm not mistaken. And before we get into that, I wanna get into the fact that I changed the name of the channel and the reason for that is that I read randomly a lot of the time. When I want to read a book, I would just look at my TBR and just randomly pick one. And that's not the only thing. A lot of the time, I read books that are random in the sense that they have very little readership, I guess. They have very little, at least on Goodreads, they would just have like 15 or 50, ratings. And basically, I read a lot of books that most people have never even heard of and will never hear about. That's part of why I changed the name of the channel, and I'll talk about some of those books in a bit. Because before we get into what I read last month, I wanna, I guess, showcase some of the things that I'm currently reading. I'm reading 2 books on my Kindle. One is I don't know if this is sci-fi or fantasy. I got this on NetGalley, which is where I get a lot of those like unknown or like random books that no one will read. But yeah, this is To Hold a Flower by Caroline Sophia Hamill. Caroline Sophia. Yeah. So I'm not sure what this book is about. I literally only just started it a few hours ago, and I've only like read like a page or something, and all I know is that this is either sci-fi or fantasy, and it's by an author that's not very experienced, I guess. And yeah, the other book that I'm currently reading is actually from the 1980s, if I'm not mistaken. It's old. It's nonfiction. It's called Overshoot. The ecological basis of revolutionary change by William R. Catton Jr. So this book is a book that was mentioned by multiple like separate YouTube channels that I've been watching, and whenever that happens, I usually just like at least check out the book. And this one seemed interesting enough for me to talk about. For me to read, so I picked it up. Although I do wish that there was a newer version of this, because this is from the early 80s, so I'm not sure how much of it is out of date. And yeah, before I find a new version of something like this, I guess I wanted to read this. And this is about Overshoot, and yeah, there are a lot of like definitions on the cover, which is cool, I guess. It's about, yeah, it's about carrying capacity overshoot basically. And so far I'm really liking it. But I'm only like 10% in, so who knows. Okay, that's enough like rambling. Now I want to get into all the books that I read last month, starting with the first one, which was Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, I think. Yeah, so this is like a dystopian YA book about a trans boy who is like trying to escape a doomsday cult basically. The world is like dystopian because this doomsday cult like spread a very deadly virus, like leaving like 99.9% of people dead basically. And yeah, I like this. I think the protagonist is very convincing, but and I like the trans representation, but I'm not sure how I feel about the actual writing of it. I think it's just because it's YA, so that's probably why I don't really read a lot of YA anymore these days, so that's probably just why I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. The second one is actually another NetGalley advanced copy. I think this one comes out, I don't know, like next month or something, in September if I'm not mistaken. It's We Need No Wings by Davila Cardinal. So this is a magical realism story about a woman dealing with, like, I think she's like in her 60s, early 60s. She's dealing with grief after losing her husband a year ago, and then on a random day she just started levitating out of nowhere, and she has to discover how it connects with her grief and how to basically stop it, and at the same time trying to like reconcile with her grief and just deal with it. And I thought it was pretty good. Again, not like perfect or like outstanding or anything, but it was an enjoyable read, and sometimes that's all you can ask for these like NetGalley arcs, because I really do just request random stuff on NetGalley. A lot of the times they're not like worth finishing, and I just like DNF it. But yeah, this one was pretty good. I like the character. I like the what's it called? The prose. It feels very literary, but not in like an annoying way. So yeah, it's pretty good. The next two are nonfiction. The first one is Jeff Goodell's The Water Will Come. So I read this because I liked Jeff Goodell's more recent, I think it's called The Heat Will Kill You or something. It's his book about basically heat and climate change. I like that one. I thought I would try to read his previous book, which is about sea level rise, and this one is less relevant to me compared to the like heat one, because I live in a place where it can be really hot, but it's not like a place that's sinking. I mean, my city is like it's a coastal city, but as far as I know, it's not sinking, unlike some other places in my country. But it was still a really good read. I read this over the past couple of months, so it's not like the most gripping, like thrilling read like some other books, like some other nonfiction can be, but it was good. It's pretty informative, and if you want to know more about sea level rise and climate change, and this is one of those good like entry points, I guess. Even though it focuses on sea level rise, it is pretty good like for climate change knowledge in general, I think. The next one is another nonfiction. Yeah, as I said, it is Vincent Bevins' If We Burn, The Mass Protest Decade and the Missing Revolution. So this is a bit similar with the previous book I mentioned, in that I enjoyed the author's more popular book. In this case, it was the Jakarta Method, which is one of my favorite books of all time at this point, probably. Because it was very relevant to me, because a big part of it is just like putting into context what I didn't know about my own country's history. But here it's not really about my country. There's like one small chapter that's about something that happened in my country. So I wanted to know if his writing is still as compelling when it's not as relevant to me, if that makes sense. And it was good. I like knowing a lot about these different protests around the world, and how they can be co-opted, and how there are like different kinds of protests, like the horizontal protests, which are like leaderless protests, as about like compared to like more traditional type of protests with leaders and stuff, and how they're different, how they conflict with each other. And it just kind of reminds me of the different types of leftists, I guess, from the anarchists, which are more like horizontal, compared to the Leninists or whatever they're called, the more like authoritarian part of it. And yeah, it's just a really interesting like political history book. And if you want to know more about protests and how they work and how they don't work, then this is a good book to read. Very informative, and there are a lot of different sources that are cited, and yeah, it was really good. The next two books are a bit of disappointments, kind of. So this one is a debut novel by Benjamin Lyer called The Failures. Yeah, I can't pronounce that word. Failures. Yeah. This is the first book in the Wonderlands trilogy. So this book takes place in like a giant mountain, and there are a lot of different parts of it. There are literally kingdoms or empires that grew and fell on one side of the mountain, and other people who live in another part of the mountain wouldn't know about it, and because it was just that huge, I guess, the mountain. And it's about different groups of people who are either trying to wake a dragon that's buried beneath the mountain, or there are also other groups of people who are trying to prevent, wait, did I say dragon? I mean giant. Yeah, who are trying to prevent the giant from waking up. And it has a lot of potential, I think. The thing is, this is the author's debut novel, and I feel like if this was the author's, like, I don't know, fourth or fifth book, it would have been great. But there are a lot of debut author stuff that I just didn't like. But I think it shows enough potential that I'm willing to at least give the sequel a try whenever that comes out. So we'll see about that. It's a very different feeling epic fantasy, so if you're looking for epic fantasy that doesn't feel like all the rest, then this might be a good book to pick up. Okay, so the next one is sci-fi. It's 2312 by Kim Stanley Robinson. So in my other video I said that I wanted to try to read more Kim Stanley Robinson because I really liked Ministry for the Future. And this one was not good. I did not enjoy this at all. I mean, I did enjoy parts of it, but it was just like 2 stars, I guess, or 2.5 stars out of 5. The thing about this is that I just didn't care about the main character. Okay, but what even is this book about? So this book is about this woman who is like a former architect, designer thing. And she finds out that her grandma just recently passed away, and she's involved in some grand conspiracy that spans multiple planets and moons, and so that she has to like uncover it and try to find out whether her grandma's death is like a natural death or was she killed. And it was just so convoluted, I thought. And if the main character was likable, then maybe I could have liked this more, but the main character was kind of insufferable for the most part, and the side characters are more interesting, which is always not a good sign. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this much. I think I will still read other Kim Stanley Robinson books, maybe in the Mars trilogy, which is his most famous work, but we'll see. Okay, so the next one is actually a reread. I read Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, but this time I reread it on audiobook, which I'd never done before. The last time before this I read Mistborn was in 2022 when I read it in the Swedish translation while I was trying to like learn Swedish. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty easy book to read in translation because Sanderson's writing is so simple. And here, what I noticed is that I feel like this book would have been considered YA if it was published 5 or 6 years after it actually was published. And maybe if it was written by a woman instead, it would have been marketed as YA, because I think it checks a lot of boxes that those like early 2010s YA fantasy books have. Like it features a teenage girl main character, it has romance, it has what's it called, like it has the theme of like, you know, what's the word, like destroying the government, basically destroying the evil government, and it just feels YA. Maybe it's just Sanderson's like simple writing, but I'm surprised that it was never, or maybe it did, it was not marketed as YA at least. So yeah, I still like this book as much as I did before. Still 5 stars, still one of my favorite reads. And Sanderson's books are one of those books, well, not all of them I guess, but a lot of his books are better on a reread, and it still stands true here. A lot of the foreshadowings, whether for this book itself or for the next books, are really, really well done. And yeah, I can't wait for Stormlight 5. Yeah, next in a few months. So yeah, The next book I read is actually another 5-star. This is the second 5-star of the year. It's Toward Eternity by Anton Her. Anton Her is an author that is actually still a translator from Korean to English. I've seen a lot of his books on bookstores. Well, not a lot of his books, a lot of his translations, I guess, on bookstores. But I didn't know that he would write sci-fi, and I didn't know he would write such an amazing sci-fi. So this book is about a world where people can cure cancer through nanotherapy or like nanites, but the side effect is that you become immortal once you do that, and weird things can happen to you basically. And there are AI, there are a lot of like poetry, language stuff, and it was so good. Like the way it's structured reminds me a bit of like Emily St. John Mandel, especially in the what's that book? Not Station 11, the other one, the one on the moon, like Sea of Tranquility, and also a lot of David Mitchell, which with the like changing like main character every chapter, and with a lot of like time skips and stuff, and it reminded me of both of those authors in the best possible ways. And it didn't feel like a debut novel, even though it is. Like maybe it's because the author has worked as a translator before. Maybe it didn't feel very debut-esque because of that, but either way it was amazing. And it's my, I don't know if it's my favorite book of the year, but it's top 2 at least. So yeah, go check it out if you're looking for a very good sci-fi. And then the last book I read is another Ned Kelly arc, but I think this one is not unknown. I think this one will be quite popular actually. It's Metal from Heaven by August Clarke. So this one is about this is a revenge story of like a girl whose family is killed by her boss, I guess, and she tries to take revenge. Oh my god, it's so good. This book gets a lot of comparisons to like Gideon the Ninth, and at first I didn't see it. I didn't see how it can be compared. It didn't feel very similar, but by the end I was like, okay, yeah, I totally get the comparisons. It makes perfect sense, and I love this book. There are parts of it that are kind of weird in the middle. Not weird, they're slow and they feel not very engaging, but the beginning and the end of this book, they're spectacular. And yeah, I can't wait for more people to read it when this gets released on October, I believe. So yeah, that's the last book I read, which is Metal from Heaven by August Clarke. I loved it. Okay, so basically I ended the month really well, even though there were some not so good reads in the middle. And yeah, I guess that's it for this video. And if you enjoyed the video and would like to see more of it, don't forget to, as always, leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, thanks for watching.